Cybersecurity, New Frontier, Critical Impact. And to discuss debate over this issue, we have a panel coming up on the dais, which will be chaired by Sanjay Deshpande. I request Mr. Sanjay Deshpande, who is the Chief Scientist and Advisor for 42 Lab, and the keynote will be done by Dr. Christian Kohlberg, Professor, University of Arizona. I request Mr. Sanjay Deshpande to kindly come onto the dais and introduce the panel as well.
Thanks a lot. So when I met Venki and Niranjan, when they requested me to be part of this event, to chair this session, we had a very interesting dialogue. And the dialogue was about, what is it that we are trying to achieve as an event, and more particularly as this session. So instead of, talking about how things will be or they should be, I told him that let us get into action mode, okay? So what is that action mode? We said that can we put together a think tank between NASSCOM and ESA that will focus on certain aspects of national cybersecurity challenges. So one of the objectives of this session, and what I'm trying to set as a context before I invite the panelists, is that it's an open dialogue. We want to arrive at a construct that will allow us to build the blueprint for the country and for the world at large in the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm using this event as that opportunity to create that kind of a construct. And I'll tell you the reasons for that. Every country goes through that evolution and it reaches a moment of transformation that it has to think very seriously about the fundamental infrastructure that it needs. Given the population and the evolution of our country, without digitizing or without thinking of a digital society, I don't think we will be able to govern, manage, and excel as a country. So this is that moment. And I think this is a fantastic moment because it's very seldom that you see software and hardware coming together, okay? So NASSCOM and ESA is that particular framework that we can talk about, where software and hardware needs to come together to solve the problems in cybersecurity. And this is one such space where this integration has to happen. So the panelists that we have, are some of the finest minds in the industry and academia. We have Dr. Christian, who would be speaking on some of the threat vectors that he's been researching. We have Dr. Arun Lokhotia, who has been, again, a researcher in this space in cybersecurity. We have Dr. Premchand, who was with the Indian Navy and who had set up, in some sense, the cybersecurity lab in the very early 90s for the Indian Navy. And we have Dr. Krishna Sri from Amrita University, again an academician. And I would say I am half academician and half scientist, and I've been running a startup for the last 9 years myself. And I've gone through the VC route in the cybersecurity space. So I'm neither here nor there. So I'm sweetly positioned to say anything, to take up issues, to take up panga, as we say in the startup world. And I want this dialogue to be that kind of a dialogue where we confront, we question, and we arrive at that construct that I have been talking about. As we move along, I'll be bringing different topics, but I would like to invite Dr. Christian to make his presentation, and the panelists can also be here. Dr. Premchand, Arun, please, Krishna Sri.
I know nothing about anything else. Today I'm going to talk about four things. I'm going to introduce you to something called the man at the end scenario, and it's something that you're probably all familiar with maybe under a different name. I'm going to talk about some of the tools and attack tools, protection tools and attack tools that we have in this area. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that this area faces, and then a little bit of discussion at the end. So, how many of you have a teenage daughter? Okay, my condolences. This is your teenage daughter, Alice. She has a boyfriend, Bob. There's Bob. And you don't know about this, but there's Bob. And she communicates, kids do these days, over Snapchat. So she takes a picture, and she sets a timeout of 8 seconds, sends it to Bob, and he can look at it, and after 8 seconds, it will be deleted off his phone. Of course, Bob would like to see this picture for longer, and so he takes a screenshot of the phone, right? You know how your phone can do. You click 2 buttons, and it's a screenshot. So when that happens, well, Snapchat doesn't want that to happen, right? So when Bob does that, a message pops up on Alice's phone saying Bob took a screenshot, and then she can unfriend him, or what kids do these days. So Bob, of course, would like to take this screenshot without Alice finding out and unfriending him. And so he downloads a hack from the internet, right, that modifies somehow the phone or the app, and now lets him take the screenshot. So Snapchat is actually a privacy company. And so what they do is they put some sort of protection code into their phone saying, after 8 seconds, remove the picture. If Bob takes a screenshot, notify the sender. And if the app has been hacked, tampered with, the environment is suspicious, or Bob is being curiously looking into the app, punish Bob some sort of way. Kick him out of the Snapchat universe. So, like I said, Snapchat is actually a privacy company. And they recently hired one of the preeminent cryptographers of the universe, Moti Young, as their security and privacy scientist. He previously used to work for Google. And Moti was the one who invented the name we now use for this area, for this type of attack, which is MATE, man at the end. So what is man at the end? Well, you're familiar with man in the middle attacks, maybe, where you have Alice and Bob communicating, and the man in the middle sits on that channel and either reads the messages or even modifies the messages. This is not what we're talking about. This is kind of the standard computer security scenario. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the man in the middle, the man at the end, where Alice has some sort of software or hardware. Bob gets hold of that hardware. He buys a copy maybe, and then is free to hack that, to extract code and algorithms, find the signs, find keys, and modify code. Man at the end. So, more formally, a mate attack occurs in any setting where an adversary has physical access to a device and compromises it by inspecting, reverse engineering, or tampering with its hardware or software. Now you may say, why would I care about what my teenage daughter does? Well, actually, last time I gave this talk, a woman came up to me afterward and said, should I be looking at my teenage daughter's phone? And I said, yeah, probably. You may say, okay, I don't really care. But it turns out that this scenario, exactly the scenario, comes up in a lot of different situations. And I said, let's look at some of those. Here, Alice is a provider of TV, right? So Bob wants to watch sports, so he buys a set-top box from Alice. And that set-top box allows him to watch the channels he has paid for. Now, of course, Bob is evil, and so he would rather not pay for this service. So he can hack into the hardware. We can clone the hardware. He can extract cryptographic keys from the software and hardware in this device. Or he can maybe get code and content out. So there's a similar protection techniques inside this set-top box that checks if Bob has paid for ESPN access. Otherwise, has he tampered with the hardware? Has he tampered with the software? Is he curiously looking into the device? And so on. And again, if he's done anything bad, Alice can punish him by kicking him out. In this scenario, Alice runs a utility, like a power company or water company. And used to be in the good old days, you had what's called a dumb meter outside your house, and then you have a meter reader who would come and read that meter, right? Nowadays, they have smart meters, so obviously everything is better. Put smart in front of something, and it's obviously better. And this smart meter is essentially a network computer that allows the power company to see how much electricity you've been using. So what does evil Bob want to do? What do you think? He'd rather not pay for electricity, right? So he hacks into the smart meter, which sits outside his house, and sends back the wrong information. Okay, so maybe that's not such a big deal, but it turns out that these meters are networked, right? And what could possibly go wrong? These are essentially network computers connected to the power company. And so what could possibly go wrong? Well, one could imagine that Bob can hack into this system and find some vulnerability. And again, you know, the smart meter's outside his house. He can hack at it at will, find some vulnerability, and send out 10 million disconnect notices. The perfect terrorist attack to carry out from your mother's basement. And you shut down power to the entire country, and you can imagine what economic consequences that might have. So in many countries now, medical records are becoming electronic medical records. So you walk into your doctor's office, and no longer does he scribble on a piece of paper, but he looks it up on his phone. So here's Bob, the doctor, and some celebrity walks into his office, and he requests the medical records from the database, and everything is fine until, of course, evil Bob, the janitor, walks into the doctor's office and somehow hacks into the computer in the office and extracts these medical records from the celebrity and sells them to the press. Right? Very similar scenario, right? It's a man-at-the-end scenario. Bob has complete access. Bob the janitor, Bob the evil janitor, has complete access to the software and hardware that's in the doctor's office. Okay, here is Alice, the nice Swedish girl, and Bob, the evil Icelandic guy, and they're at war with each other, Sweden and Iceland. And what does Alice do? Well, she drops these wireless sensors on the battlefield, send back information about troop movements, about chemical warfare, about radioactivity. So what does Bob, the evil Icelander, do? What do you think? He picks up one of these remote wireless sensors, hacks into it, and sends back the wrong information to Alice. No troops here, no radioactivity, nothing, just come right on in. Right? Again, a man-at-the-end scenario because Bob is in complete control over this device. So the scenarios that I've shown you are actually just one scenario, right? Where Bob has complete control over the device and can do with it what he wants. The man-at-the-end scenario. In all these scenarios, we have various tools to protect the devices that we deploy. And these, in the software realm, of course, there's hardware protection, there's software protection, and I do the software kind. In the software realm, we deal with code transformations. So you have a piece of software that you want to protect, and inside that software, there's some assets that you want to protect. Source code, algorithms, cryptographic keys, or media, or what have you. And then you have transformations on that code to transform it into a more protected piece of code. And there are all kinds of different transformations. They're called obfuscating transformations that make programs harder to understand. They're tamper-proofing transformations that make programs harder to modify, and so on and so forth. And all these tools add some overhead. Some programs get larger, they get slower than before. And of course, we want to minimize overhead, and we want to maximize the protection, and that's the kind of work that we do in academia, and also there are industry who work on this. And there are lots of tools that you can buy, and they tend to be fairly expensive, $100,000 or more for a top-end tool. And there are a few open source type tools. Now, Bob, the evil guy who wants to attack our software, he does so by using code analyses. And there are many, many analyses that are available to take up a protected program and extract the assets that we want to protect, the source code, the algorithms, the keys, and so on. And again, Bob cares about time, how long it takes him to protect this, to analyze his code, and the precision of those analyses. And again, there are lots of free and open source tools that are available to do these type of analysis. So we have this cat and mouse game between Alice, who's trying to protect her code, and Bob, who's trying to analyze it. And we are building tools that increase the level of protection on one hand, and tools that increase the precision of these analyses. And I would love to tell you about lots of algorithms in this space, but there's no time. Instead, I would like to point you to this wonderful book, which I wrote. It's the only book in this area, and you can get it on Amazon and so on. So it's blatant self-promotion here. So what are the challenges in this area? Well, for Alice, who wants to protect her software, there's performance and time to crack. She wants to have software that's as performant as possible, and she wants to increase the time for Bob to crack it. In this area, there's no, as far as we know, no way to completely protect this, at least not within reasonable time bounds. So we always want to protect it for as long as possible. And what does that mean? Well, in many areas, performance matters. It's because we're working on very low-power devices, slow processors, battery-operated sensors, and so on. And I asked some of my colleagues in industry, and they said, well, no protection can run in more than 1 second. And how long can we protect things for? Well, I asked again some colleagues in industry, and they said, well, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 12 months for some really well protected software. So what are some of the challenges? Well, evaluation of this is really difficult. How do I evaluate how good my protections are? Really, I would like to be able to, as an academic, I would like to be able to draw a graph like this saying, this is my new protection technique, and it's got better time to crack, longer time to crack, at better performance, but we really don't know very much on how to do these evaluations. And when you don't know how to do evaluation, it's difficult to know when the field progressed. Another problem is that in order to do these evaluations, you need some actual tools that can transform code to more protected states. And industry, like I said, has tools that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those are not available to us in academia. So my group is building these kind of tools, and Professor Arun's group is building attack tools, and this is very important. So maybe you don't care about any of this. Why would you care? Well, things are changing. You've all heard of the Internet of Things, and it turns out that all these Internet of Things sensors that are coming to us, they're all endpoints. They're all susceptible to these type of man-at-the-end attacks. And someone recently said that this is not Internet of Things, it's insecurity of things. So, if you don't want someone to hack into your pacemaker or which talks to your refrigerator, which talks to your potted plant, which talks to your car, you really do need to care about these things. And certainly in the military area, this is also important, right? As you all are aware, in 2011, Iran captured a U.S. drone. It was flying around, and then eventually somehow landed in Iran. And, the Iranians and the Americans differ on how that happened. But this, and of course, what did the Iranians do? They decode the drone software and the recorded data. They reverse engineer the drone, and they claim they made a copy of it. And again, it's kind of a man-at-the-end attack. They had complete access to the drone. So to summarize here, this area is very important because these type of situations, the man-at-the-end situations, will occur more and more. And but we face some real challenges here. We must develop algorithms which are both high in security and high in performance. And we must find ways to evaluate this so we know when we are doing better. And we must make these industrial strength protection and attack tools available to researchers so that we can do this kind of evaluations. So I don't know if we have maybe a minute or two for questions. Thank you.